Check, 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 check. Yay! How's it going, everyone? Nice to see all of you. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to change my levels a little bit. So we are currently at... Ooh, whoops. What's happening? Great. Cool. Check. Ah, there we go. Cool. So we're currently at 343 Labs YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/343labs. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Greetings to a couple of folks who are joining us as regulars. TWD, how's it going? Hello also to Juan, who's saying hi from Argentina. Latino Sofrito, hello as well. Welcome everybody to this stream. And this is a crazy week for us at 343 Labs. Thomas from 343 Labs is back with us managing the chat. Thanks, Thomas. And this entire week, we're really excited to be doing a lot of programming for kids. Specifically, our summer program just started today, so Thomas and I just came from that. And on the note of just summer programming, if you do want to check out a bunch of things that we're doing over here at 343 Labs, you can head over to our website. That's going to be 343labs.com. So in addition to the streams, it's like today we're doing the classes and then we're going to be doing it for the next few weeks. Tons of things happening. And also I was telling a couple of folks this in another stream on another platform, but I have a new monitor. So now I can finally see two things at once. That's amazing. It's like, wow, new monitor, two monitor life finally. Finally managed to save up enough for it before getting one. So yay! Greetings to everyone who's tuning in. Really appreciate all of you as well. I'm just going to adjust a couple of my levels over here to make sure I can hear myself over here. And oh my goodness, hi Tal. Nice to see you over here. I'm saying hi to a bunch of different kinds of people. But yes, we are here. And we're doing some things today in tips and tricks that I think you might have heard just now in the beginning song, if you were hearing that. That tune that you just heard was a flip that I did, and I use the term flip to refer to like a cover / remix in a way. A flip that I did that was live, that was a flip of Skylark. So I don't know if there are any other jazz fans out there, but Skylark is one of my favorite jazz standards. It's one of the first tunes that I learned to play in the jazz idiom. And there's a beautiful version by Ella Fitzgerald, amongst many other really nice versions too, but I kind of got inspired to flip it. It was originally written by Hoagie Carmichael and Johnny Mercer, but I kind of took it and I did like a version of it. If you check it out on the 343 Labs YouTube channel, there is a version of me doing a breakdown of that performance, but I kind of wanted to dive a little bit in and show you specifically more in detail about how I would go about setting up some live looping stuff. So this is a little bit more on the performative side of things, and specifically I wanted to talk about live audio looping, which is a little bit different from MIDI looping. If you've seen me do any session with Ableton Live or with Push, then you'll know that looping is a big part of my usual workflow, and then I use it often to, create different units of music and layer things together. That's really the premise of looping. It's creating these little blocks or little clips in live, if you will, and figuring out different combinations of them to put together. Oh, hello to Delirium, and also hi to Nathan. Hi, Nathan. I love the dancing emojis. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're keeping safe in this crazy time. It's all a little crazy. But here we are in live, and I've got Push with me as usual. It's over here. It's not going to play a super huge part today, or it might, depending on how things go. So I'm going to maybe change my camera angle a little bit so that you can see more of Push, but here it is. For anyone who's joining in for the first time, welcome. 343 Labs is a school that's based in Manhattan, and we're usually very on top of it with our in-person classes, except when we're in quarantine. So now we're doing a lot of online stuff. We have a lot of online summer intensives coming up as well. But we are an Ableton Certified Training Center, and I'm one of a couple of Ableton Certified trainers who teach at 343. And I'd like to show you today a little bit of looping stuff with Push, which is the hardware. So Push is the hardware. Live is the software created by the company called Ableton. Anytime that you hear me use the word live in the streams, I am using the proper terminology to refer to it. People often misnomer it as Ableton, but Ableton's really the company and Live is the software. Well, let's start off doing some looping. So I do ultimately want to do audio looping, like I said, but maybe I'd just like to reiterate a couple of the premises and the bases of looping through doing some MIDI looping. So Live is really good at picking up two kinds of signals that producers use to communicate with our software to make music, MIDI and audio. MIDI is a little bit like a language in that it's the producer giving signals or notes to a piece of software, and the software is kind of interpreting that and giving us a specific sound. So it could be a drum sound, it could be a bass sound, could be a synth sound, versus audio is really what you might pick up from a microphone. So anytime you see a microphone in like a real live context, maybe you're at you were at a show, now you shouldn't be at a show, but if you were at a live show and you see someone with a mic that looks just like this, that's picking up audio, and it's in turn going to be a different type of signal compared to MIDI. We can't change it as much as we can with MIDI, but we can still manipulate it in some pretty interesting ways. So that's what we're going to do a little bit of today. But let's do a bit of a looping recap in general, and specifically looping in live in session view. So over here, and whoops, I just bumped my knee and everything shook. But what I like to start off with is maybe looping some drums off the bat. So let's head over here to Push. And let's add a device to this empty MIDI track. Right now it's empty, so when I press on Push, I'm seeing a couple of things light up on Push, but I'm not hearing any sound, and that's normal. You need to first add an instrument to a MIDI track if you ever want to hear anything played. Ooh, hi, greetings to a couple of returners. Hi, Liso. Hi, Scott. Hi, Nefertiti. Oh, thank you so much for the kind words, Scott. And just to put us all on the same page again, my artist name is spelt in all lowercase letters as DOLLTR exclamation point CK. So if you ever see me spell it otherwise, or if you ever see the spelling otherwise, it's probably not been approved by me. So that's how you know if something's been approved officially by Claire or dolltr, if the dolltr name is spelled correctly. So all lowercase letters with the exclamation point. Thomas can give you some interesting anecdotes about that. Sorry, Thomas. But in the meantime, let's load up a drum rack onto this. So drums are a really good way of, I think, starting to play with loops. And let's see if we can create some kind of basic beat. Cool. Let's just grab an 808 chord kit. So an 808 chord kit, I was actually specifically talking about 808s in my class today earlier on with the kids that we're doing the summer intensive with. But I've started to also, I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but I'm also an ethnomusicologist. So nowadays I'm trying to do a lot of that with my music tech classes too. So I was telling them about how the 808 was, commercially released in 1980 and it was starting to get really popular in a lot of music genres, including Detroit techno. That I did a recent lecture of sorts about the history of dance music and ethnomusicology related to dance music culture. And so I spoke a lot about Detroit techno and the rise of that in the 80s, and how the 808 and the 909 drum machines that were made by Roland were very much popular at the time and still continue to be. But we've got a bunch of different sounds, all of them electronically generated. And let's start off with some kick stuff. So let's put in some kicks into the step sequencer over here in Live. And one thing that you might notice immediately is that we start having this constant pattern that's looping in the background. So what does it mean to loop? It means that we're having really an infinitely repeating type of sound that's going to go on and on and on until we stop it. So for example, right here, I'm going to make the drums a little louder. I've got this kick that's just going on and on and on, which is, funnily enough, the name of a song also. Let's also make these kicks a little higher in velocity. Great. So I just made them a little bit stronger. Now these will only stop if I stop. Ooh, if I hit over here. And if I press on any empty clip slot in session view, so I can either do that from Push or I can also do that from Live. Anytime you see a square button in Live or in any software really, that button's going to mean stop. So that's a useful clue for us, right? Because that means if we head over into Live and we press any clip slot that has a square in it, that's going to stop the sound. So right now we don't hear any sound. So that's a really great way of stopping a loop. If I want to play the loop again, I can just press on the loop and it's going to trigger in time and loop according to a certain kind of quantization. So let's take a minute to talk about quantization, everyone. What does it mean to quantize something? Well, if you hear the word quantization and if you've used music software before, you might be familiar with it being referred to to quantize notes and to tighten up timing. Well, in Live and in a couple of other softwares now that allow you to play different kinds of clips in different orders in a nonlinear fashion, there's also something that's called clip quantization or global quantization or launch quantization, lots of different names for it. But that basically means the name or the name of the time division that you're going to be able to loop against. So for example, now, if I head over to the top left-hand corner of Live, I see a word that says 1 bar. Now, if I take a look at this thing that says 1 bar, I'm also gonna put my screen over here just so I can see more clearly. Give me 1 second, everyone. Cool. So if I head over here to this 1 bar thing, and if I click on it, I have the option of choosing a couple of different things too. So I can choose 1 bar, I can choose 2 bars, 3 bars. I can change this to say 4 bars now. It's going to be on the top left-hand side, but I'm just going to make it 1 bar because that's the default that comes in Live. This means that anytime I press play on any clip that I have, it's going to launch at 1 bar intervals. And because of this, everything is going to kind of stay locked in time together. So a really great way to illustrate this might be to make a couple of copies of this kick drum that I have and create different loop variations with it. I'm also going to shift this up to the top because I noticed how it's not in the very first slot. That's because I was messing around and clicking around just now in Live. But right now it's at the top over here. I can duplicate this clip and I can add on some sounds. Maybe let's do some claps. So now I have 2 loops. I have one that's just a kick, and I have one that has a kick and a clap, and you'll notice how they're kind of seamlessly moving between one another. And that's because the launch quantization is set to 1 bar. So let's duplicate this one more time. And let's build upon this by adding in some hi-hats. So I'm going to do this super quickly. I have another stream that talks about using push. You can check that out from a previous episode of 343 TV. But here we go. Great. Cool. So now we have this basic loop that's kind of going on and on and on, and it's just looping infinitely until I tell it to stop. So let's build up a couple of different parts, and then we're going to jump into the audio looping stuff. But usually when I think of productions, I think of them as having 4 pillars of music production. You've kind of got your drums, and then you've got your bass, and you've got your chords, and you've got your melody. So right now we have our drums. They're mostly holding down a lot of the rhythmic stuff that's happening. So got a pretty neat house beat now. Ooh, in the chat, everyone, actually, let's see if we can change this up a little bit. So if anyone could throw me out a number between 120 and 130, let's do something housey, so let's keep it in that range. But if you want to give me a number between 120 and 130, we can do some interesting stuff with it and change the tempo a little bit. In the meantime, let's continue on, though. Let's keep adding our 4 pillars. So maybe at this stage, let's add on some chords. I'm going to pull up a new MIDI track. And let's see what we got. Let's maybe just get some synth keys for today and find a sound that we like. So that's pretty neat. Let's pull that up. Cool, Latino Sofrito, thank you. Let's do 130. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the tempo from push. So I'm going to use this knob over here, and you can see on the top left-hand corner of Live, our tempo is no longer 120 as it was originally by default, but it is now 130. So here we go. Faster. Yeah. Cool. And before we do the chord stuff, nice, I like this patch. If someone could give me a letter that's between A to G. I asked for this too. So any letter between A to G. And we can figure out what key we're in. And once we're there, then things will move along a lot faster as well. So let's do a letter from A to G. Not sure if we... I feel like there's always like some delay between... Cool. Itamar, thank you. Let's do E. So from push, everyone, I'm going to make the root over here, E. So let's go ahead and press that E. So now I'm playing an E major. I think it might be cool to do E minor though. So let's do E minor. And now let's think of some kind of chord progression. Again, through looping. Now on push, one feature that I find super useful is something that's called fixed length. So this is something that you can only do on push, but with push, you are able to choose a certain length of notes that you would like to, not a length of notes, a length of a loop that you would like to record. So let's say I had a 4-bar loop, maybe with a certain kind of chord progression. I could set that over here on push and say fixed length, I'm going to record only 4 bars. Or I can also just record without. So maybe I'll record without for now, and I'll demonstrate a little bit of what happens afterwards. So let's go ahead and, oh, we had a question from Liso. Why are some of the instruments on live, thank you, live not in standard tuning? That's usually because it is up to the person who made this particular patch to do that. So some of them will be in standard tuning. Most of them will be. If they are a synthesized instrument, sometimes depending on the kind of synthesizer that you're using, you will get changes in frequency as you move up the register. But let's take a look at this particular instrument and maybe do a bit of a deep dive. So we've got amethyst harp over here. That is useful for a lot of synth key sounds. I think we took it from the synth key patch. One thing that we can do is dive a little bit deeper into amethyst harp. So I'm going to click on this little icon over here on amethyst harp. Ah, it's tension. So what I've done over here, everyone, is that I've looked at this instrument, amethyst harp, and I've opened it up a little bit to take a look at its contents. And this is actually a really neat tip. It's a doll tip. If you want to learn sound design from live, and if you are a live user, it's really useful to be able to open up instruments and see exactly what is going on. Tension is a type of instrument in live that's a physical modeling instrument, which means that it's meant to emulate a real life type of instrument, for lack of without nerding in too deep about physical modeling and going super in depth into that. But tension is modeled after plucking a string, so it's kind of related to the name of tension. It's like a tense something. You have a tense string and you're plucking it. But if you double click on tension over here, it's going to open up the instrument. And you can see exactly what's happening. So because it's emulating a string, Liso, to answer your question, strings in real life have a little bit of fluctuations as far as their pitch and their tuning go as well. So this might be a little bit off, especially if you have perfect pitch. You might be able to catch on with that. I don't, so it didn't really come across as something that was super concerning to me until it was brought up, of course. But yeah, some slight variations. But because of that, we end up getting a pretty nice type of natural sound, if you will. Latino Sofrito, I'm not sure what you mean by this, because there are many things that this can refer to, so if you could clarify that, that would be amazing. Chris, hi, Chris, welcome, greetings. If you have two instruments clashing at the same frequency, would you sidechain one of those instruments to the other? So it's interesting, sidechain compression, if you think about it, what does it actually do? That's a great question, and usually I think of whether something is going to solve something by actually thinking about what that first thing does. So what does sidechain compression actually do? If you think about it, when you are sidechaining something, you are affecting the perceived loudness of a signal by changing its volume. So you're basically using the input from one sound to change the volume of another and make it softer, duck it down a little bit. It's also called ducking, so it's something that also is very common in a lot of broadcasting. If you're ever listening to the radio and you suddenly hear a radio DJ speak and then the volume of the music goes down, that is sidechain compression. It originated from radio, and now we use it very creatively for a lot of things in, say, EDM. And anytime you're hearing a music and you hear something go wah, 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 and if it's sounding as if the volume is changing very rapidly in a very rhythmic sort of way, it's possible that is side chaining. Not always the truth. It could be a low frequency oscillator as well, but it's possible that it is side chaining. So if it's changing volume, then maybe to answer your question, Chris, it's possible that it could contribute to helping clean things up, but it might be more effective for you to use something that actually deals with the frequency spectrum if you're trying to solve a frequency spectrum issue. So in that case, I'm kind of like throwing this question back at you, Chris, but what do you think might be a good type of audio effect to use to control a frequency spectrum? So yeah, Lisa, no problem. You're most welcome. Bilal, how does sidechaining relate to attack? It may or may not relate at all. So it really depends on your question. Usually when we refer to the attack of something, it refers to how fast something is kicking in, but it's different depending on what kind of instrument you're talking about. If you're talking about a specific synthesizer, attack refers to how fast a sound is coming in. So for example, this pluck, that has a very quick attack because it's coming in very quickly. If it were some kind of softer sound, maybe it would fade in a little bit and be like, that has a soft attack versus ba, that has a hard attack. So drums, again, usually have very hard attacks too, very quick attacks. But pads often have very soft attacks. Latina Sofrito, I was talking about MIDI controller. That, yeah, totally. This, I meant, I don't know what you actually meant by this. I'm well aware that APC40 is a MIDI controller, but I'm not sure what you meant by this. Did you mean looping? Did you mean fixed length? What specifically do you mean by that? So if you could clarify, that would be amazing. And yes, absolutely, Chris, totally, equalizer. So in that case, sidechaining might be, it might be contributing partially to it, but an EQ could probably help you clean things up a little bit more as well. And yes, Bilal, multiband compressors could also help. A multiband compressor is a type of compressor. It's a subset of that too. So absolutely, those could also help. But back on track, because we're talking about looping. That was a quick divergence, but we've got our drums. Let's loop some of these chords. Let's just do a simple 1, 4, 5. Let's do 1, 4, 5, 5, 5, 7. 1, 4, 5, 7 in a minor key. So here we go. Let's loop some stuff. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So I'm just going to make this softer. But one thing you might have noticed also is that from my looping of all of these things, everything was just continuously going on. And that's really one of the most powerful parts about live looping in particular. You can layer on a bunch of these different sounds without stopping the music at all, really. So sometimes when I'm just jamming on my own and when I'm doing other streams, which some of you might have seen also, I'm really not pressing the stop button at all. It's just going on and going on. So I've got my drums, I've got my chords. Let's live loop some bass onto this. So let's add a track and let's find a bass patch for us. So let's look for sounds, can browse for some sounds, look for some bass. Ooh. Actually, I do think there's a patch in here that's called bass housey, so maybe we need that. Maybe we just need that patch. Just need to find it first, though. Bass house. Ah, there it is. Great. Bass housey. Let's load that up. Cool. Nice. So here we've got our bass sound. It's a little loud, so I'm going to adjust the volume a bit. But I'm also going to bring up the drums and the chords so that I have a reference point for the tempo at which I'm live looping, and also the cycle of the live looping. And this is where it comes into play, the fixed length. So I'm not sure if this will answer Latino Sofrito's question, if it was what you were referring to. But fixed length is an option, like I mentioned before, that is only available on push. So fixed length lets you loop a certain length of notes. And at this point in time, I know that my chord progression I recorded just now, let's take a listen to it again. There's my first chord. There's my second chord. There's my third chord. And here's my fourth chord. So I've got a 4-bar loop. Sometimes I do that and it's like I sing in the key. So I've got a 4-bar loop. Now that I know I have a 4-bar long chord progression, maybe I would like all of my subsequent loops to kind of be the same length. And that's really when I would turn fixed length on. So I'm going to make sure that I have fixed length on, and I can choose any length of bars that I would like. So I can do a fixed length of 4 bars, of 8 bars, of 2 bars also. But since I have a 4-bar chord progression, let's do a 4-bar fixed length loop. What this means is that now when I start recording, I'm not going to have to press any button to stop the loop. It's just going to automatically stop after 4 bars. So a very cool live looping feature on push. Let's also make this a little louder. and lower too. Bass sounds are usually lower if you remember from our previous streams. Cool. So let's do a little bit of that. Here we go. I didn't have to press stop. Just kind of went on and on. So yeah, premises of live looping. It just kind of goes on and on and on as well. But yeah. Yes, Latinos Frito. Yes, push only. Yes, I mentioned that before. For the APC though, that doesn't mean you can't loop. You can absolutely you loop. You would just have to start and stop it manually by pressing on a button, which I'm gonna show you how to do a little bit in a moment on push. Cool. So we got the basis for a bunch of our patterns, which is great. Now though, what about audio? So this is the fun part that that's what I really wanted to get to today. But we're often thinking about audio looping as a little bit of a mystical art in a way. Like I don't know if anyone's ever thought the same way, but when I first saw someone loop audio, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. There's like 4 versions of them at the same time. And to start off, it's pretty straightforward, just looping. So what I'm gonna do is show you a very quick and dirty way of starting to loop something in live. And in this case, you can do this from push, but maybe what I'll do is I'll show you how to set it up just from live itself by clicking around. From push, you can do this as like I said too. But from here, I'm also going to just close up a couple of these sections that I'm not needing. For example, I'm not using my sends, so I'm going to close those up. But I am using my inputs though. So what I'm going to do is create a new audio track in live. It's going to be Command T if you're on a Mac or Control T if you're on a PC. And boom, now I have my new audio track over here. As a hint, though, I already do have an audio track over here, and that's actually my mic input in live. So you can kind of see how I have this green meter that's going up and down. That's just a monitoring section for me, so nothing we have to worry about too much, but I am going to speak about it a little later. On this track, though, my number 6 audio track, let's color it pink so that it stands out. Now, on my pink audio track, I see a couple of things. I see that I have audio coming in from external 1. And that's probably the most important part about looping to begin with, especially if you're taking in any kind of audio input. You need to make sure that you have audio even connected to that. So that's something that's going to show up in your preferences in live. There's a really great section about setting up preferences in the Ableton reference manual that's completely free to view online. So if you just type in Ableton reference manual, you'll be able to check that out as well. But I'm not going to go too deep into the audio interface world itself. But right now, just know that I have a microphone set up, and I've set it up so that it's connected to Ableton Live, and I can kind of see its signal coming in here. So I've got audio from external in 1 in the input and output section of live. I also don't have any signal coming into the big meters, though. Why is that so? That's because I don't have this track record armed yet. If I press on this little circular button at the bottom of the track, ooh, now we see some kind of gray signal come into this audio track that I have over here. We don't hear it though, because my monitoring for this track is off. Now, monitor is a word that we use so much in life in general, even outside of music. We use monitor to refer to like screens. You just heard me refer to my new monitor that I had. But monitors can also, weirdly enough, refer to speakers. So I have like my monitors here too. Those are also monitors. And to monitor something, when we talk about audio, usually means to hear it back in a certain kind of way. So in live, whenever we're playing with anything that we can hear, we're usually playing between 3 different kinds of monitoring settings. And in fact, we see all of these in my live session now. So if you head over to, if you take a look at my live set over here, I've got my microphone, my KMix 1 mic set to monitoring in. What does monitoring in do? This means that I'm only going to be able to hear whatever is immediately coming in to my mic. So that means the audio track is receiving audio. I'm able to send audio to it. What about audio? What about monitoring set to auto? Monitoring set to auto is really a mix between in and off. So in order to explain audio, maybe I should talk about off first. So if in is monitoring everything that's coming in and is going to let you hear everything that's coming in, what is off going to do? Off is going to show you that yes, there is some kind of sound coming in if you have the track record armed, which is going to be this red box with a circle in it. That's the record arm button for each track. So it's going to monitor off is going to be, yes, I'm ready to record some sound, but you're not going to immediately hear it. Why is this useful? Well, it's useful if you're looping. So it's useful if you're looping because otherwise you may actually hear multiple signals at the same time. So if anyone out there is a looper and if you're using Live to loop and if you're hearing multiple versions of yourself, that's probably why. At any point in time, I usually only try to have one track that's set to either in or auto when I'm looping. So see what happens if I set this to auto. Check, check, check. Now there's two versions of myself, really. And I end up being super loud because there's two. You can see I have audio signal coming in here, and I also have signal coming in here. But when I turn monitoring off, then my voice goes back to a more of a normal level. So that's one thing that I like to do, especially since my input monitoring is on here. But what if I turn this input monitoring off? I mute this track. So you probably couldn't hear me back then, but now you can hear me over here. And you can hear me in this new audio track that I have. So that's because I've set this to auto. Let's see what happens if I set this to in. Again, I can hear myself, yay. But if I set this to off, I'm still speaking, but you can't hear me if I have it set to off. So that's a little bit of the differences between all of these three versions. For looping though, I like to just going to reset a couple of things. Cool. For looping though, I do like having this set to off so that if I'm singing through a main track, I can set my loops up for something else. And once I have this armed on push, we are going to see that we have a different view of it too. Anything that you see on push that has an entire red strip lit up usually means that that track is record armed. So true enough, we see that over here. I'm going to just cover this a little bit so you can see the shadow of it, and it's not blocking too much of push. But that's where we are now. So we have this entire other set of loops going. Let's see what happens if I want to loop a little bit of audio onto it. So I'm just going to do like a quick vocal type of thing, maybe. Thinking of some ideas. Cool. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Do 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 do. And there I am. Again, you'll notice I didn't have to stop anything at all. I'm just there. Cool. So let's take a pause right now. I'm going to launch an empty scene so that we can stop all of these clips. So great, I have one audio loop going. What if I wanted a second audio loop? That's when having copies of the same track can be useful. So let's duplicate this track and its settings. But we're also going to delete this that we had over here. So we've just deleted the other clip from the second audio track. But now I can arm the second audio track and get ready to record in some complementary loop. So let's try to do this. Just gonna rebalance some levels to help me with my recording. So a bunch of different looping stuff. And that's something that you can see me do in full on the fly in a I think a slightly quicker fashion than this in my Skylark flip that you can watch on the 343 Labs YouTube channel. And you can also watch me do a breakdown where I go into a little bit more in depth into all of that. But yeah, that's just like a really quick way to do this. Live looping is one of my favorite parts about live, because you can start doing a lot more interesting manipulations on the fly. You can also add different kinds of effects to these things. So maybe now, if we wanted to, we can head over into each of these tracks. And maybe we can add a device. Or let's do this from live. So I'm going to head over into the software now. Ooh, whoops. Goodness, my size of live just changed a little bit. Give me 1 second, everyone. Cool, there we go. So now that I'm in live over here, let's click on this audio track and let's maybe add a little bit of processing to it. So I'm also going to unarm the other tracks. I'm not picking up anything. But let's solo this particular track. And I'm going to introduce to you a couple of effects that I like putting on vocals to give them a little bit more of an interesting type of feel to it. So we got that. A couple of things. I would like to first EQ this particular vocal. So this is actually kind of going back to Chris's point just now, but EQ is really great for cleaning up certain frequencies. And I do think there's quite a lot of low end in this because I have a fan next to me. It's quite warm now, so I do need the fan. But I also do want to cut out that low end a little bit. So tidying this up a little bit. Also because generally frequencies in female vocals don't tend to stretch too low. So for a lot of female vocals, I tend to put something that's called a high pass filter on it to cut out a lot of that low end. I also do like to compress a little bit. And what a compressor does is often confused slightly, but a compressor, as the name implies, compresses a sound. So it doesn't make things louder, but it makes softer parts louder and louder parts softer. So imagine this kind of, maybe an accordion is actually a really great example. I only just thought of this, but an accordion, if instead of being sideways, we're really doing this. So you're taking the softer parts and making them louder, and the louder parts and making them softer. So you kind of get this slightly more mini type of sandwich that's happening. So we're going to do that to our vocals. The reason why a lot of the time people think that it makes things louder is because after you've compressed something, in order to bring it back to its original volume, you often employ something that's called makeup gain. And that's to make up for any type of volume that has been lost in the compression process. In Ableton Live, in the compressor, this happens automatically. So that's a reason why people sometimes get a little confused. But let's compress this. What I want to do is bring the threshold down on this compressor to where my vocal is coming in, which is about minus 40, looks like it, or minus 30 something. And that way I'm catching everything. We also see this little yellow bar start to pop up in the compressor. It's labeled GR, and that stands for gain reduction. So like I said, gain being volume, that's measuring for us how much is being reduced, and live in the compressor is making up for that volume. So that's why it's sounding louder too. Great. So now that we got that, we can make this a little louder too. And I'd also like to put one more effect on it. Sometimes I like putting a chorus on my voice. So I'm going to grab a chorus preset from the audio effects category. And now it sounds a little bit wider. You can hear it in the left and the right ears. So here is before our entire signal chain. I'm going to click on all of these and turn them off. So here is, here is before. And here is after. Cool. So there we go. And what might be nice to do also is have the same chain on the second piece of audio. So I'm going to copy all of these over. I'm going to select all of them, select the first EQ, the first device, hold down Shift, and then select the last device. And then I'm going to hold down the Option or the Alt key, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC, and click and drag this over onto my second audio track. So now if I play both of these back, and I can adjust levels accordingly. One thing I like to do whenever I'm stacking up different kinds of vocals is generally for vocals that are higher in pitch, I'll actually have them a little bit louder. And that's because usually higher frequencies tend to be picked up much more easily by the human ear. So we don't need to have them as loud, but we could still have them loud enough to be able to hear things, but not as loud as lower sounds. The cool thing also about this in particular is that these loops are kind of the same, and it's a 2-bar loop, but it's really just a 1-bar loop repeated twice. And I didn't record this beginning of the loop quite so well, so I can adjust the start point by dragging that in. So now I have a solid 1-bar loop. And the same thing for this loop too. You have to make sure that you start correctly though, so there we go. Awesome. So let's take a pause here, and I'm going to head over into the chat for a second. Oh, this is so nice. I don't have to like click through all the windows. I just turn. Amazing. TWD, are there any probability settings baked into live looping, or does that enter MSP territory? Absolutely. So just to put everyone on the same page, everyone, MSP is a subset of a particular software that's called Max MSP Jitter. Most of the time people refer to it as Max, but Max is a virtual programming environment that lets you do a lot of different types of processing. And Max and Live actually work in a form called Max for Live, where Max is inherently built into Live Suite, which is the most advanced version of Ableton Live. And you can even create your own custom instrument. So that's absolutely something that I do a lot too. With probability, I'm also wondering, TWD, if you're thinking of any specific probability things. For example, probability with regards to the loop length, or with regards to other settings. So I'm wondering what probability you are thinking of specifically. And Bilal, yes, filters and compressors, makeup gain is automatic in Live. Yes, interesting. So Bilal, to your point, just so I think you might perhaps be new to my streams, but Live is the software and Ableton is the company. So it's not automatic in Ableton, which is the company, but it's automatic in Live. So yes, it is. Paul, nice to see you again, Paul. Paul is one of our students, and he's taken some courses with us. Can you save these 3 effects as a single effect rack? Yes, absolutely. I do have a custom effects rack that is actually different from this. But yes, let's go ahead and save this as an FX rack. So in order to do that, we need to be in device view and not in clip view. So we can do that by pressing Shift-Tab on our computer keyboards. Shift-Tab, boom. And now that we've Shift-Tabbed over, we can see all of our devices. What I can do is I can select all of these devices. Again, click on the first device, hold down Shift on your computer keyboard, and select the last device. And now if you're on a PC, you can hit Control-G, and if you're on a Mac, you can hit Command-G. And oh, hi Blair, greetings. Oh, Blair, one of my other students, is also here too. You can click Command-G, and these will group all of these together. And now that these have been grouped together, yes, Paul, if you remember, whenever you're saving a particular thing in Live, if you ever see a little floppy disk icon, so floppy disks are a little bit synonymous now with saving, but it's kind of ironic because like I haven't touched a floppy disk since I was maybe a teenager. It's been a while since we used floppy disks in school. But yeah, anytime you see a floppy disk, you can save that. So now all the way on the left-hand side, there's a little floppy disk on the lower left-hand corner of Live over here. And clicking on that is going to let you save that to your Live library. So you can call that any kind of thing that you want. For me, I have a specific FX racks that maybe we can go into in the next tips and tricks. If in the next tips and tricks, if you would like to see me talk about building FX racks, let me know in the chat. That might be kind of cool. But for now, for example, I have this FX rack I'm going to turn that off, but I have this FX rack that says, where is it? Where is my dolltr FX rack? I think I might have to type it in and search for it. Vocal, in all results. Vocal rack. Ah, cool. It's my CML vocal rack. Let's put it, I'm just going to put this directly on my microphone maybe, and we'll see what it sounds like. So here is my default vocal rack. It sounds a little different now and crazy because I'm not singing, but when I sing, it sounds a lot better. So yeah, let's put that away. But you get the idea. You can absolutely save it to your library. Itamar, is there a benefit to using a compressor rather than normalizing the gain of the vocal audio after recording? It's really up to you, and I think that it's as far as benefits go, there are always benefits and detriments to pretty much anything that you use. With compressors, the origin of compressors, being hardware types of sounds, is that you will change the color of a the tone of a particular vocal or a particular piece of audio that you've recorded. And so that for that reason, a part of my vocal chain that maybe you saw just now, I'm not sure if it was in that one, it might have been in another vocal rack, but a part of my vocal chain is a type of compressor called the LA2A, and it's really a software emulation of that called the CLA2A by Waves. And it's to color the vocal a little bit. So it does compress, but it also colors it a little bit. You could also change the gain. What a compressor does, though, is it also makes sure that you're not, catching on any additional peaks, especially if your vocalist has a very dynamic sort of vocal. By dynamic, I mean that the voice changes a lot in between like softer parts and quieter parts. So that's actually why I personally have a compressor on my voice whenever I'm talking to you. Any students who have been in in-person classes of mine know that my voice can be very dynamic. So that means sometimes I speak a little bit more quietly. Other times I get super energetic and it gets really loud. So right now you're not hearing too much of that because my voice is compressed. But in the real classroom, if you're ever in a real life 343 Labs class with me, you'll hear my voice kind of go all over the place. Very dynamic voice. So, TAETRO, hi! TAETRO is our creative director at 343, everyone, who's also the in-charge person of managing all of our streams. Hi, TAETRO. Yes, dual monitor setup, big upgrades. I finally saved up enough to get myself a new monitor, so I have it over here with me. Very excited about it. And it's like over here, and then the camera's here, and yay! Good days, good times. TWD, I like it for things like drum variations. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yes, Bilal, you're most welcome. MIDI randomness injection, I see. Yes, well, if right now we're talking about looping audio, so we're not looping MIDI, so it's a totally different thing altogether, I would say. Yes, Bilal also, yes, sometimes compressors have gates too, so it can help with managing noise. The reverse of a compressor is called an expander. So a gate is a type of expander. So that's what you can usually do with that too. Yeah, great. I'm glad that I kind of got to touch on all of those questions. I'm kind of running through everything. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the questions at now. So cool. Let's see if we can listen to this right now. Maybe with these unsoloed. Cool. So now that I have all of these different types of things, let's maybe talk a little bit about what it means to be able to do a couple of other interesting looping type things on the fly. So one thing that I do sometimes do is change the pitch of things. So for example, I've got these loops over here. Let's stop these, the drum stuff, but let's play with the audio stuff. Cool. So it's cool, they're kind of doing their thing. What if I wanted to make these a little bit crazier though? So if I head over into clip view, let's just play with this one main loop that I had first. Something else that I do a lot of when I'm playing with different kinds of clips is, here we go. Especially if they're audio, I try to change the pitch and make it interesting. So let's warp this. It's already warped actually, but let's head deeper in here and maybe change the warping of this. So maybe if I wanted some kind of interesting sample. And you kind of hear that little click. That's really because of the transposing types of things. But let's do the same thing over here for the second clip. Maybe this one will make... You can kind of hear all these interesting things happening. So now they're kind of like an octave higher. So that's something I try to do in... looping stuff too. And you can pretty much do most of these things like on the fly without having to, you know, stop live at all. Just kind of continuously looping. Let's do a couple more things though. So let's head over here. Now, one thing that I like to do a lot with different pieces of audio too is as a, I just noticed that we are finishing up in time though. So maybe I'll just ask the question one more time because I'm not sure if we managed to get answers for this, but I would love to, I was just about to go a bit more into building looping FX racks, but if you would be interested in that, let us know in the chat and maybe we can do that at the next stream. It might be fun to do that as well. And I'll just do a quick wrap up about maybe a couple of the looping concepts that I talked about today. But as with most things in live that we're doing, we can loop two kinds of information. We can loop MIDI and we can loop audio. So again, MIDI is going to be all of these notes that you can loop very quickly in succession, create different clips and variations. And really without stopping at all between different kinds of variations of the same loop, just building it up and up and up. And then we also were able to loop some chords. And once we got that set up, we noticed, okay, these chords were 1, 2, 3, 4 bars long. So because of that, we wanted to have the same length of a loop for our bass part. So we turned on something called fixed length. We turned it on so that we could have a 4-bar loop matched correctly with the piano. Goodness, my words were like escaping me for a moment. But yeah, with the chords. So once we did that, we were able to just press the record button once on push and then have that loop on its own. And again, this is a function that you can only get from push. There are, kind of alluding to what TWD said though, there are ways that you can use Max for live devices to set up specific loop lengths. I'm not going to go in depth into that today, especially not within like 3 minutes left that we have, 3 or 4 minutes. But yeah, that's totally something you can do. So now we have loops that all kind of, go with each other and are all the same length. Then we talked a little bit about looping audio and what it means to have an audio loop go. So we had to set a couple of things up in live, and we talked about different ways that you can monitor as well. And you can do some pretty interesting things with looping and input monitoring that I didn't go into today, but you can check out my other tutorials with 343 to talk about that. I do speak about it, like I said, in my Skylark tutorial, which was the tune that you heard at the intro of this session today, so I hope you liked it. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for saying that you liked it very early on. Really appreciate it. But yeah, so we talked about looping audio, and then I talked a little bit about building an FX rack for it. So right now on each of these audio tracks, we have an EQ, we have a compressor, and we have a chorus that's not active at the moment because I turned it off, but I'll turn it back on again. And because of this, we're able to treat our audio that we've looped a little bit better and make it sit a bit better in the mix overall that we have. So that's something that I also do try to do. I try to mix on the fly in a way, not super extensively, but just to make sure that I'm getting the right sounds that I want, because that's also going to set me up for other kinds of sounds that I make in the future. So because of that, we were able to record 1 loop and then 2 loops, and then we played with their warping and their transposition as well. So we ended up getting these. With a little bit of a weird warping start, but that's okay. Something to be a bit changed as well. Going to stop these. Whoop, stop all these clips. Great. Cool. So just going to check a couple of the chats. Yeah, Tree of the Way. Thank you. Oh, yes, cool. Awesome. Maybe next time at the next stream on Monday, we'll do a little bit of FX rack building. That'll be fun. I love building FX racks. Makes me really happy. Yay. Tree of the Way. Thank you so much for tuning in. We stream every day. This is 343 TV. If you want specific shows by me, I stream every Monday. My name's dolltr, but I also go by Claire. That's the name that I teach under with at 343. It's my real name. dolltr is really just my artist project. But yeah, so you can tune in every Monday. We will be here at 1 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. So it's going to be a pretty regular thing, hopefully. Thank you so much. Really happy that you enjoyed it. And yes, absolutely, Thomas, like Thomas added, Thomas from 343 Labs. You can also view our previous streams. So you can check, if you want to type in, if you want to check out previous tips and tricks, you can type that in into our YouTube channel and you can check that out. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, everyone, if you want to be notified of whenever we stream next. But yes, also, oh, thank you so much, Paul, for the kind words. Yes, good courses if you want some intensive training. Paul did a course with us that was, I think, it was like 3 classes a week for 4 weeks. That was really intensive. But we do have other offerings. We also have an upcoming Ableton Live Summer Intensive 2 that's going to teach you all the basics of live. And Scott, yes, excellent point too. The latest version of the Launchpad Pro, the Mark III, does also have fixed length recording. So that could be an option as well, especially if you're familiar with the workflow of Launchpad and you want that fixed length. That's definitely an advantage over getting the Push, even though the Push is probably my darling at this point, which some of you know. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We've come to the end of another 343 TV stream. But thank you. Really appreciate all of your time. Thank you to Thomas for managing the chat as usual. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow for Techno Tuesdays with the one and only John Selway. And I'll see you again next week on Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. And until